Have you been struggling to get beautiful cells within your fluid art? Well, with 8 easy to follow steps, I'm here to help. So let's get started. Let's first start with the supplies you'll need. I have my stretched canvas here. It's just a regular canvas. I have the back taped off with some frog tape. It will protect the back from being a painted mess, and it's so easy to peel off after. And that canvas is 12 by 16 inches. Next up, you'll need some plastic cups. I have 5 3-ounce cups and 2 9-ounce cups. You'll need a pair of gloves and some mixing sticks. I'm just using popsicle sticks. Now, usually I have my colors pre-mixed in containers like this, so I use less plastic. But to show the whole process, we'll go with the plastic cups, and I can just rinse them after and reuse them. You'll need a cell activator. My go-to is 100% silicone oil. It's all covered in paint here, but it's Montmartre. I have some tap water and a kitchen torch. If you do a lot of fluid art, it will look something like this, but it works. Next, you're going to need a pouring medium. I highly suggest to use Floetrol. It's my go-to, especially when creating cells. It's a perfect consistency and it doesn't crack after. You'll get gorgeous cells. You'll need some paint. I have my black and white in some bulk containers here. But for any vibrant shade, I like to use Liquitex Basics acrylic paint. The colors are so vibrant, so that's my go-to for any color. That covers all the supplies you will need. Let's get to step 1, which is choosing your color palette. I like to use 5 different colors, along with my base layer, which is usually a white or an off-white shade. I do buy that one in bulk since I go through so much white. So how do you choose? I'll usually start off by picking one color. In this case, it's going to be blue. I'll find 4 other colors that complement it well and make sure to use a mix of dark and light. And you can get that high contrast with dark and light by either adding black or white. Typically, I'll throw in a metallic shade, but we're not going to do that this time. And if you're having difficulty picking out a palette, I would highly suggest to visit colorpalettes.net. It will show you a palette of 5 colors along with a picture beside them showing how they all look together. It's a great resource. On to step 2, which is mixing your acrylic paints with Floetrol. This is by far the best medium for achieving cells, in my opinion. So to start, I'm going to fill the 3-ounce cups, all 5 of them, with about 1 ounce of Floetrol. And then for my base layer here, the 9-ounce cup, I'm going to add around 4 ounces. You don't need to measure exactly, but I usually try to aim for a ratio of half Floetrol and half acrylic paint. So let's mix our first color here, which is going to be a nice, warm, light cream color. Sorry, I just knocked my camera there. So I'm adding in some white acrylic paint, just trying to make it even with the amount of Floetrol I have in there. And to warm up this white shade, I'm going to add in just a small amount of brown, which is the Liquitex Burnt Umber. Just a little dollop on the popsicle stick here. And then I'm going to add in an even smaller amount of the cadmium yellow medium hue. It's the tiniest amount. And we will mix that all up. It's not going to be the right consistency, but that is our next step. For now, we just mix the Floetrol with the acrylic paint and we get the colors we're looking for. There we have it. I'm going to go ahead and mix the other 4 colors and we will move on to our next step. I've mixed all of the colors. I have my white base layer, cream, 2 blues, and 2 purples. Now we're gonna thin it out with some water, which is step 3, creating the perfect consistency. I've already done it to the base layer here. You can see that as it drips from the painting stick, you can see the outline, but it quickly dissipates. That is your perfect pouring consistency. So let's do that with our blue here. So you can see it is too thick for pouring. That will crack if I poured it that thick. We're just gonna mix a small amount of water at a time. You can always add more, you can't take it out. So just do it in small amounts. Mix it well, and then check the consistency. And I blocked it with my hand again, so sorry about that. We'll try to do better this time. Mix, mix, mix. And then lift up that stick. And as the paint pours down, you can see the shape quickly dissipates. That is good to go. Let's mix our beautiful purple color here. It's too thick. We'll add in a bit of water. And I don't measure out the water. Consistency from mixture to mixture might be different based on the ratio and the type of acrylic paint you use. So you don't need to measure out exactly, you just want to eyeball it and go off of the consistency of each individual mixture. So I've made sure all of those colors are the right consistency. And on to step 4, which is adding our cell activator. My go-to is 100% silicone oil. I've tried different brands. They all seem to work the same. I'm not going to add it to these back colors here. So I'm just adding 1 single drop to our purple, blue, and our cream. And this is important. Don't over mix it. If you heavily mix in that silicone oil, you're going to get tiny little cells. So if you want those big, beautiful, defined cells, just tap it in lightly like this. And that is it. This step is done. On to step 5. So for step 5, we're going to layer all of these paint mixtures in our pouring cup. Not putting the base layer in, we'll put that aside. We're just using our 5 colors here. When layering the cup, I don't find it matters a lot whether you pour it kind of on the side like this beside each other or one on top of the other. I find that there are 3 important aspects to layering the cup. Number 1 is the colors that you're putting one on top of the other. I like to layer the very dark colors against the very light colors. That way you'll get a really good contrast and you'll have very defined cells. I also like to layer the different colors on top of each other. So you'll see here I'm doing blue, purple, and then every once in a while throwing in my neutral cream. The second important part when layering the cup is how much you're pouring at a time. You can see here I'm only pouring small amounts. I'm doing several layers. This way the canvas will have a nice spread of all of the colors and I won't have one area of the canvas being predominantly one color. But that might be a look you're going for. Maybe you want to have big chunks of a canvas being one color. In that case, just do a lot less layers. And the third and final thing that I find is important when making the pouring cup is the speed of which you pour. I like to go nice and slow. If I went too fast, the colors will start to mix as I pour so quickly. And then you'll end up with more muddy colors on the canvas and you won't have those defined lines. So those are the 3 things I keep in mind when making my pour cup. And we're just about finished here. Just doing the last bits of each color. And then we can move on to the fun part, which is the pouring. And I've poured so slow that now I've run out of things to say during this part. So there we go. We are done. Pour cup is ready. On to the next step. On to step number 6, which is pouring out your base layer. For a while, when I made fluid art, I tried to avoid this step to save the paint. But I find I was having so many fails. The base layer is definitely worth using this paint. Without a base layer, I find that the paint mixture grips onto the slight texture that canvas has. And as it spreads, it's not a nice smooth line since it is gripping to that texture. So instead, you end up with warped lines and really deformed cells. So especially for silicone pours, I really think a base layer is an important step. And normally with base layers, I don't let them pour off the edge like this. But for silicone cell pours, I do, because I need that layer to be very, very thin. The reason I need it to be so thin is because with the silicone pours, I don't like the paint to spread much. It warps the shapes of the cells, which means more paint ends up on the canvas and it can dry and crack. So to avoid having too much paint on the canvas, I make sure the base layer is nice and thin. When I first started creating the cell pours, I had a lot that would end up cracking because the layer was so thick. So when I started to make the base layer nice and thin, I noticed a big difference. Now that it's all poured out, I'm just going to torch the top and get rid of some of those bubbles before we pour our main layer. And while it's super fun to use the torch, make sure you don't get too close to the canvas. Now we are just about ready to pour, but one last quick note. Normally, I would pour right in the center of the canvas and really spread it out. But because I want those cells to maintain their shape, I'm going to get a lot closer to the edges. It's time to pour. Step number 7, pour your art out. There we go. So you can see I'm pouring nice and quick. The faster I move, the more cells you get. You can see here I'm slowing down. I only have a bit of paint left, but I'm not getting any cells there, just some nice lines. So if you want a lot of cells, pour nice and quick. Now I'm going to take the torch again, see if I can activate cells any further. That should just about do it. Now we are on to our last step. We're going to activate these cells with the use of movement and heat. So first up, I'm tapping the canvas down quite hard, and you'll see cells pop up. And now we're going to spread it across the canvas. So I'm happy I got it close to the edge. I don't have to spread it too far, and hopefully we can keep a lot of these beautiful cells. I love the little white stripe of cells here, so I'm going to try to keep it on the canvas and not pour it off. We'll get down to this corner. Now just one corner to go. Once you have the canvas entirely covered, you have all the corners covered, some of the cell shapes might look a little bit wonky. So you can adjust back. So you can see I'm pulling everything back into the middle to try to make some of those cells nice and round again. And I think that should do it. This looks beautiful so far. Now I'm just checking all the edges, making sure there's no blank canvas peeking through. And to do this, I will rotate the canvas so I don't ever have to reach over the canvas. Some of the paint might drip from your gloves, and that's very disappointing. We're going to tap again, get those bubbles out, activate any more cells. Lots of tapping here, and you can see I'm not being very gentle. I'm letting it hit those upside down cups, and it really does help activate some more cells. Once that is done, we will go in again with the torch. We'll see if any little sneaky cells want to pop out. And we'll get rid of any of those air bubbles. So 2 in 1. A little more torching here. I'm a little far away, but I am activating some small little cells here. And after that, you are done. that is the 8 steps to get some beautiful cells. So let's take a closer look at this piece. And here we have it, all finished. This is the freshly poured piece. We'll take a closer look here. Just look at these cells. They're so beautiful. There's so many layers of colors that go wonderfully together. There's so many different sizes and shapes. I'm really happy with this piece. I think it turned out just gorgeous. The cells down the middle here are just stunning. But I will say the piece is still wet here. So it's looking glossy and beautiful. The real test will be, how does it dry? Is there going to be any oil, cracks? Let's find out. Here it is, all dry. And again, I'm so happy with this piece. The colors look so vibrant. The cells look amazing. There is no oily residue. There is no cracks. I'm so happy with this piece. I'm still debating if I should do a resin top coat, but for now, that is it. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope this was helpful, and I will see you next time. Bye.